Hey everyone, and welcome back to Splash. Today, we are going to be talking about 15 times The Simpsons predicted the future. Make sure you stay till number 1 so you don't miss out on the shocking accuracy of The Simpsons. You'll be absolutely shocked. Number 15. They predicted the death of George Floyd. We all know The Simpsons has held long a reputation from fans for predicting historical or newsworthy events. Just a little while after the death of George Floyd, a screenshot supposedly from an episode of The Simpsons featuring justice for George Floyd imagery started making its rounds on Twitter. Users are sharing an image that they believe to be from an episode of The Simpsons predicting the death of George Floyd. The imagery shows Chief Wiggum standing on the neck of a man with Lisa close behind, holding a sign reading, "Justice for George." Is it real? Is it fake? The image was actually created by Twitter user VIP Cartoonizer, and one way to tell is through the art style. It doesn't actually resemble the animation once favored by The Simpsons. It can be clearly distinguished from older episodes. So basically, The Simpsons didn't predict Floyd's death. The image of Chief Wiggum kneeling on a black man's neck was shared in the days after Floyd's death and didn't appear in an official episode of the show. Number 14. They predicted the occurring riots. To argue that The Simpsons predicted the riots happening right now simply because an episode featured riots is frankly absurd. Nevertheless, a clip from the show in which Springfield residents riot and chaos erupts is being shared across social media. Some are also pointing to The Simpsons, in which Springfield residents form a mob. Although the image of the Springfield police station burning did come from an episode of The Simpsons, this clip had nothing to do with Floyd or the 2020 protests. Conspiracy theorists are definitely having a kick out of this one. Number 13. The GoPro, or a camera in comparable size that was featured on a 1994 episode. Homer took part in a hidden camera investigation into the expired meat on sale at the Quickie Mart. Bites Back host Kent Brockman in the Channel 6 investigative news team gave Homer a giant novelty hat to wear that contains a tiny camera in it, and we know only a GoPro would fit in there. 20 years later, we were introduced to the GoPro, which is the go-to hands-free way to record your travels while swimming, running, biking, or spying on people. Number 12. The Simpsons also predicted Trump, as in President Trump. Now, it's been well publicized that they predicted the Trump presidency in an episode 16 years ago. The episode is named Bart to the Future, and in it, Lisa is the president of the USA and is attempting to rebuild the economy after Donald Trump ruined it during his term as president. Number 11. The show also correctly predicted the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize winner 6 years before it happens. That's right, never underestimate Milhouse. He is a genius, seriously. In 2010, he correctly predicted Ben would win it, and he did in 2016. The Nobel Peace Prize economics Milhouse was part of a Nobel Prize betting pool with Lisa, Martin, and Database. Number 10. It turns out the creators of The Simpsons were also mathematicians, apparently because Homer Simpson discovers the Higgs boson before anyone else. Homer was a good 14 years early on the God particle, which helps explain how everything in the universe has mass. In the 1998 episode, Homer becomes an inventor and is shown in front of a chalkboard with an extremely complicated equation. Unbelievably, that equation actually predicts the mass of the Higgs boson, or something extremely close to it. It's absolutely incredible and was co-signed by Dr. Simon Singh, author of The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets. Number 9. The show also predicted Greece's financial crisis a few years early. Before you go running to economists for prediction, maybe you should consult The Simpsons. The insightful show has called many global incidents before they happened, and the Greek financial crisis apparently didn't escape their oracle-like vision. In the episode Politically Inept with Homer Simpson, which first aired in January 2013, Homer appears on a tongue-in-cheek version of Fox News. Homer appeared as a guest commentator on the program. On the program, watch closely as the ticker runs across the bottom of the screen reads, "Europe puts Greece on eBay." Of course, just 3 years later, Greece plunged into an economic crisis, becoming the first developed country to default on an International Monetary Fund loan repayment. Number 8. On March 19th, 1995, an episode of The Simpsons entitled Lisa's Wedding took a futuristic view of Springfield's favorite family. Lisa's fiancé, Hugh Parkfield, bent over and spoke into a strange-looking device on his wrist, a half flip phone, half wristwatch that most modern viewers would liken to a smartwatch. But it wasn't until 19 years later that Martin voice recognition enabled smartwatches would become widely available to the masses thanks to major tech companies. Number 7. Although this one is extremely bleak, The Simpsons may have hinted at the Ebola outbreak way back in 1997. The episode features Marge trying to get a sick and depressed Bart out of bed and offering to read him this book, Curious George and the Ebola virus. I know it's a stretch, but this episode was widely shared by YouTube users, the Controversy 7, who theorized the show predicted the 2014 America Ebola outbreak. Number 6. The National Security Agency made headlines in 2013, but the NSA played a pivotal role in the Simpsons movie back in 2007. A quick refresher. Homer accidentally glues Springfield's water supply family, goes on the run, and the EPA declares the family as fugitives. The NSA finally tracks down Marge and the kids by listening on their conversations. And 6 years later, Edward Snowden reveals the widespread mass surveillance of its citizens by the American government through phone and internet records. Number 5. Another scary one. Siegfried and Roy's tiger attack. In the episode, Mr. Burns is opening up a casino with the wannabe Siegfried and Roy, two German magicians, Gunther and Ernst, and their long-running show that tragically ends in a tiger attack. Sadly, this episode parallels what happened to Roy of Siegfried and Roy in 2003. The tiger lunged at Roy's neck during the show and dragged him off stage. He was in critical condition after the attack, but survived. However, he never regained full use of his left side, according to ET. Years later, the entertainer doesn't blame the tiger and thinks it was actually trying to help him. I got a stroke and fell down. I see these blue eyes staring at me, Roy explained. I was like, what now? What happened? He then continued. He picks me up by the neck and got me to the side so he'd know I'd be safe. Like a mother with a cub, he took care of me. Number 4. In 2008, The Simpsons showed Homer trying to vote for Barack Obama in the US election, but a faulty machine changed his vote. 4 years later, a voting machine in Pennsylvania had to be removed after it kept changing people's votes for Barack Obama to ones for Republican rival Mitt Romney. Massive voting machine failures in a Pennsylvania county in November are giving election security advocates fresh ammunition to call for nationwide paper ballots. The problems, which may have been caused by a software glitch, resulted in some Northampton County residents who tried to vote straight-ticket Democrat initially registering as straight-ticket Republican. It also incorrectly showed a Republican judicial candidate winning by a nearly statistically impossible margin, the New York Times reported November 30 in a story headlined, "A Pennsylvania County Election Day Nightmare Underscores Voting Machine Concerns." Number 3. There is no crystal ball in The Simpsons writer's room, but you could be forgiven for thinking so. The Simpsons predicted 9/11 in 1997. YouTube user Truth would find huge points out that the bus advertisement that promises New York ticket for $9 perfectly lines up with the Twin Towers, which in turn reads New York 9/11. In 2009, Bill Oakley, an executive producer on the show at the time, said $9 was picked out at a comically cheap fare, he says. And I will grant that it's eerie, given that it's on the only episode of the series that had an entire act of World Trade Center jokes. Number 2. Still on performers, The Simpsons predicted Lady Gaga in her Super Bowl halftime show. Kudos for Gaga would headline a big-time performance. Lady Gaga starred in the Super Bowl 51 halftime show, and she did not disappoint. The superstar began her halftime show on the roof of the Houston NRG Stadium before dropping down to the stage on the field, knocking out all of her biggest hits in the process. She began with a patriotic medley before moving on to the songs that made her famous, finishing the entire show without a guest appearance as we've seen in past shows. But it's not all that shocking, as she is one of the world's biggest stars. What is really impressive, however, was how spot on the performance was. Her Springfield performance had her suspended in the air, and the same came through 5 years later, when she descended from the roof at halftime during Super Bowl 51. Number 1. This prediction came way back in 1995. Lisa visits a fortune teller at a fair and was transported 15 years into the future. She is talking to Marge using her phone's video chat feature called a picture phone, which was way ahead of its time, but finally became reality in 2010. And now we are using it, even our grandparents. Even though 1992 was the year that IBM unveiled the very first smartphone. Fast forward 2 years and the device officially hit the market for a cool price of $1,100 a pop. And after only 6 months, it had sold over 50,000 units. While personal cell phones have been around since the 1970s, the creation of a smartphone excited American consumers in an entirely new way. While you are here, click on one of these videos on your screen. See you there! Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.